Let's turn our attention back to developments at home now. I'm joined by Mark Kenny, Senior Fellow at the Australian Studies Institute at the Australian National University. Mark, thanks so much for your time. First time for the new year, and we're kicking off with some big developments in the McKenzie case. Now a whistleblower that worked with her saying that the alarm bells were rung well before this was made public, that this whole program stank, particularly the way it was being overseen by the minister. As I mentioned to Andrew Clennell earlier, if there was any doubt before this story emerged this afternoon, surely there's none now that she will be gone.
Yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, everything adds up to her position being untenable. And this story that Andrew Clennell has, it seems to me it just has the ring of truth about it, because, I mean, sometimes you might say, in a situation like this, oh, well, it's easy, you know, it's hard to believe that someone going way back would have known how something could have turned bad. But there's history in this area. Of course, we know about the whiteboard affair that took out Ros Kelly back in the 90s in the allocation of sports grants. And so, you know, it's well known that politicising this was a very dangerous thing to do for the minister. So it makes sense to me that someone would be looking at this and going, are we serious? Are we really... You know, we really taking these departmental recommendations and overriding a whole lot of them and allocating all this money to our own political advantage? Even in Labor seats, it was very often the case that it was in Labor seats that the coalition hoped to pick up in the election. So it's a very clear case of, you know, political allocation of public funds, and these revelations just, I think, are just another nail in a coffin that was already being lowered.
Indeed, and the granular detail that Andrew has in that information from the whistleblower as to just how brazen this was within the minister's office is quite extraordinary as well. Yeah,
it indicates that there's a level of sort of deliberation here, that everyone's fully aware of what they're doing, and they're even building in a kind of a defensive story into the process. We're going to refer to this as what was it, reverse pork barrelling, for example. It's a line we saw the minister trot out some days ago when she was attempting to defend this. So everything about this points to this system being a deliberate usage of funds in contravention of good governmental practice, in contravention of what is what taxpayers, what the community standard would be in regard to this, for what? For the political advantage of the government.
And one of the disgraceful elements of this revelation this afternoon is that $160,000 spent on a report which spoke about the health benefits of shooting, but then we can't be definitive, a disclaimer at the end saying we can't be definitive that that's due to their shooting practices. It could be due to other matters. I mean, it was ridiculous.
It was incredibly unconclusive or inconclusive. And very
Except that it cost $160,000.
That part of it was quite conclusive. It certainly cost $160,000 of taxpayers' money. It was a complete waste of time to begin with. And when you look at the words, I saw the words in Andrew Clennell's report before, and the wording even, it looked like it was written by a 10-year-old. It had the term physical activity twice within one sentence, and then it was in the dot point relating to that sentence as well. You know, like they were really obviously scratching for sort of content here to kind of make a case. And as you say, at the end of it, it had that escape clause saying, but all of this might not mean anything because we can't actually establish a causal effect between, you know, shooting and benefit to individuals or the community.
And the whistleblower says, raise the concerns, and the Chief of Staff and responds saying, this is what the minister wants, basically. It's hardly a great defence of the program.
Go figure. I mean, that is the problem, isn't it? This is what the minister wants. This is what this program was designed to do, obviously, at least in the political minds within the government. It was designed to feather bed coalition seats and help win a few that the coalition didn't have, and that's what it was fairly cynically and ruthlessly used for. And this is all coming out. I don't know how she's lasted this long. I'm not sure what the political strategy is that the Prime Minister's office has in mind. I mean, I suppose we can take it at face value and say, well, he's got these two inquiries going, one by the Attorney General, one by the head of the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, a former coalition staffer, I might add. But nonetheless, you know, those two inquiries are going on, and presumably if they say the minister's culpable, then the Prime Minister's already made it clear that he'll act on that, so perhaps that's what he's looking for.
And one of the elements is obviously he's trying to say there's due process being undertaken here.
Clearly there wasn't due process in the program itself.
Well, exactly, but Phil Gations, the Secretary of Prime Minister and Cabinet, undertaking this review, it still hasn't been delivered to the Prime Minister, so he's been delayed by that, as Andrew suggested, that the Bridget McKenzie defence was only given to them at the 11th hour as well. So that's delayed it too in terms of the report. But having said that, all of this is such a distraction for the Prime Minister as he prepares for what is not an insignificant speech on Wednesday at the National Press Club, because he wants to set out his plan for the year.
Prime Ministers often try and do this, don't they? They often try and start the year with a big National Press Club address, try and sort of lay down some markers for what they want to achieve in the year, and try and, in a sense, own, as Prime Ministers should, own the political agenda for the year, you know, really take the initiative. But often we've seen Prime Ministers coming out of pretty bad summers and having to use these things really as a, you know, as almost as a catch-up mechanism. This Prime Minister is very much in that case. You know, I've rarely seen a worse summer for a Prime Minister who went into the season in something of an ascendant position. So, yes, it's very difficult for him to do that anyway, and then with this hanging over his head, you know, he certainly wouldn't want to be the Prime Minister in that situation. And so what's he do about it? I mean, presumably the plan is to punt McKenzie before then, because if he doesn't, we know what a lot of those questions will be at the press club.
Well, even with her departing, you would imagine there'll still be questions, but at least he will have a credible answer in terms of the response.
That's right, and you can imagine Morrison's very good at answering questions or at not answering them. I mean, he's very sort of good at sort of short, punchy answers. He's quite distinctively different from, say, Malcolm Turnbull in that sense, but he can also stray into being glib and overly smug and clever and that sort of thing as well. But yes, if he's punted the minister and if he's done so on the advice of his chief bureaucrat, then I guess he's got a story to say, well, you know, we looked at this, we took the evidence and we've taken action.
And he wants to get off on a positive foot this year. As you say, it's been a difficult summer for him. Some of those around him have conceded to me, obviously just returning from summer myself, but in terms of this period, it's been difficult for him, that he's lost a bit of confidence, and he'll want to get out there and try and get a bit of that momentum back in terms of his own political and not just political response, but leadership more generally.
I think that's right, and you know, this whole sort of Scotty from marketing thing that's really taken off over the summer, this hashtag that particularly in places where I guess the Prime Minister doesn't have a huge amount of support anyway. I'm thinking of social media sites like Twitter, but nonetheless, you know, the idea that the Prime Minister's good at campaigning, is good at sort of reeling off a line, is good at the presentation, but he's not particularly deep. I think that's what he needs to be demonstrating at this National Press Club address. He needs to be showing some depth and some articulation here against changing circumstances.
Mark Kenny, Senior Fellow at the ANU, great to see you. We'll talk to you later in the week. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Kieran.